Welcome to our session, Funding a Digital Future Worth Living. My name is Giesswein. I'm working with the WU Executive Academy and Digital City, and I'm your host for the next 1.5 hours. It's so great to have wonderful panelists for a core item that we need to talk about, that we need to discuss. Where is the money? Digital humanism, yes. But where is the money? But obviously, it's not so easy and not so binary. It's about all of the resources. How can we have the resources that we need to really have tangible and concrete effects of digital humanism in our society? And therefore, I'm very happy that we have a wonderful panelist board here with Karin Tausz, Managing Director of the Austrian Research Promotion Agency. A little bit of an applause. We have Michael Stampfer, Managing Director of the Vienna Science and Technology Fund. We have Marie Ringler, leading Ashoka's work in Europe and member of Ashoka's Global Leadership Group. Marie. Professor Günter Klambauer from the Johannes Kepler University in Linz. And heading the digital affairs at the Chamber of Labor, Fridolin, Herkommer. I will go into more details, obviously, also giving more information about your careers and where you come from. But first, we want to jump into the first round, which is about what is already here in resources for executing, for bringing digital humanism to life. The second round will be towards the future. What do we still have to do? What aims do we have to set ourselves to go to the perfect world with digital humanistic approaches? And the third round is very much your questions, your inputs, also your statements, your own projects. So we want to learn here in this group together. If you have any questions before that, if you want to change something in the agenda, if you want to jump in, just do that. Let's try to have this very lively third day noon session here. Any questions so far? Okay. Karin, may I ask you to start off with the first round where we look at what is already here. I just give a little bit more of introduction to your career. As said, Managing Director of the FFG, which is this Austrian Research Promotion Agency, a core player on the federal level. And the FFG is a national funding agency for application-oriented and business-related research and innovation in Austria, bridging this gap between science and business. In 2024, over 7,800 projects were funded with a total sum of around 1.2 billion euros by your organization. You yourself, you studied economics at the Vienna University of Economics and Business and previously held various management positions in the, for example, mobility sector. Give us a little bit of an overview when it comes to the FFG and digital humanism. And I have here the first of the 2 slides that you provided to us. Please.
Thank you, perfect. Thank you for this kind introduction. And as you said, our main focus is applied research, and so we have been funding digitization for many, many years. Our core target group are companies, so we are funding on the one hand company projects, but also collaborative projects between science and companies. And we are funding digitization in many aspects and many ways, and digital humanism, as you can see here, is also a very important aspect we want to address. We do not have a specific program line for digital humanism. Why? We are absolutely convinced that it's necessary not only to address the business value, as you might have heard from one of the keynote speakers in the morning, but also the social value. So I would just like to focus not only on the more technological aspects of digital humanism, which often means the human-machine interface or the usability of a specific tool. I want to highlight where we are addressing with our funding programs the social value or other values like the green transition. So these are some aspects like the one which is really the most important for me, which is how to use artificial intelligence and other digital tools and platforms for democracy and media, so to make sure that you can identify fake news, but also to make sure that society has the possibility to validate the quality of data, the access to data, and the usage of data. The second one is modern work, which means on the one hand, on the individual level, how digital tools, not only AI, can support individuals in their work environment, but also to make a more inclusive work environment in companies. Then we have the topic, for example, for sustainability. The projects we fund range from, let's say, the implementation in the sector of agriculture to identify the connects between, for example, heat waves or climate change and the health in society, which is really of increasing importance. And also, for example, for life sciences, like bioinformatics, or to improve the life of elderly people. And I just brought the second slide, please. I just brought some examples. We have many, many more. You can find almost all of them also on our homepage and our success stories. So just to give you very briefly an insight what we mean by funding the digital humanism in our projects for digital humanism. The first one, Diffusive AI, is exactly what I said before, a project to avoid disinformation, because this is a threat for democracy, so to detect and correct disinformation in media, so for the public, but also for the journalisms. And in almost all of those projects, also in the first one, this is not only a project between companies and scientists. There's also the participation of, for example, public authorities, which is really, really an important thing. The second one, Telecare Hub, is an online platform for formal and informal caregivers, which means dementia is an increasing problem in our society, and it's really a burden for people who are taking care for them, and this online platform will give them support how to deal with it and give more and more information. Heat Protect is an example about how to manage heat waves and the impact on the healthcare system. Fair AI, we will learn more about this project in the evening on the occasion of our industry reception, so you're welcome to attend. And this addresses the research gap. You have on the one hand the risks for the society in the application of AI, and on the other hand the requirements of the European AI law. And this project will identify the research gaps. And the last one is also in the field of people and society for very rural regions where often elderly people are living, to give validated predictions of the transport demands, and then to define transport solutions also for these regions. So all these are examples for social value and the usage of AI and digital tools for greater good.
That is very impressive. Thank you very much for that. Maybe a second question here. Me as a happy former FFG grant receiver, for me it was so natural to have your colleagues, your employees in the company, but also your jury having a natural embedded thinking for digital humanism, ecological impacts, etc. Was this a strategy? Did this come as an advice from the government or from the European Union? How is it so that it's so natural for you as a big institution to have those programs that are really shaping our society?
Well, I would say on the one hand, this approach is part of the Austrian research, technology, and innovation strategy. So it's based on the national strategy. And this is exactly why we don't have a specific line, because we don't want to address those kind of topics in a silo. It's absolutely necessary to integrate it. And so we follow this approach in the training of the members of our staff and of our experts, but also in the training and the briefing, I would say, for our juries.
Very good. Any questions to FFG, to the projects already? I will ask you this a lot, right? Because at the third or fourth time somebody raises their hand, right? We want to be very interactive here, but thank you very much for this input. So anytime, just raise your hand and we come with the mic to you. But so I declared myself as a former grant receiver, but maybe Günter Klambauer has a look at that and says, oh my God, that's exactly what I need for my research and for my business. So maybe you can give a feedback on the funding situation that you see here. Let me give for the audience a little bit more detail to those who are not 100% familiar with Günter Klambauer. You are a full professor at the Institute for Machine Learning at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz, and you are the director of the Machine Learning for Molecule Discovery program in the ALICE network. You received awards for your research, and you are known for the development of deep learning methods. So here is the expert, here's the researcher, right? Especially for drug development, deep tox. And self-normalizing neural networks, and your research and your results is also used, for example, by Apple within the Siri domain and others. You're currently leading projects on AI, that's why I'm asking you. AI-supported drug discovery and medical image analysis. How happy are you with the support, for example, of the FFG and other grant givers for your research?
Yeah, for us it's very essential, and we're very happy to have these funding agencies in Austria like FFG. We also had a project that falls in this life sciences, where we developed a sensor network together with AI for early detection of epileptic seizures and so on. So we had several of those projects that allow us to build up a large group of AI researchers. We also got recently a big grant by FWF on where almost all AI groups in Austria work together on so-called bilateral AI systems. So we try to develop a completely new type of AI systems, not like the purely neural network type of the large language models, but we try to integrate the symbolic AI, which has logics and reasoning. We try to integrate that into this, or combine it with the neural networks and large language models to come up with new AI systems that are more human-friendly, more steerable, more explainable. They follow norms and guidelines. And so there's a big project that's going to run still for 4 years, and in total there will be 100 researchers, not only my group, across 6 universities. And yeah, so this allows us to, in Austria, even become a critical mass of researchers, because we know nowadays that AI projects are really big. So if you think of developing something like ChatGPT, you need, so there were involved at least 300 researchers, multi-millions of dollars, so billions of dollars, to develop such a system. So maybe now it's a bit cheaper because computing becomes cheaper, things are out, things are more known and become more widespread, so it's now of course cheaper. But AI projects that make a difference are very big, and that's of course we rely a lot on funding to develop that, and especially if you want to develop new types of things and explore new grounds. So as a researcher, I'm very happy to have grant givers here, and Austria is a small country with a bit of funding compared to big other countries that invest in AI, but we still have a chance because we have a lot of good researchers, and I think we can get to a critical mass. Yeah.
You're a researcher and you're dependent on grants, but when I went through the newspapers and the online magazines a few months and years ago, I saw that you are an equity holder of a company, NXAI.
I'm part of this NXAI company that is a spin-off of JKU, where we develop a particular large language model based on the XLSTM technology. So behind these GPTs, generative pre-trained transformers, ChatGPT, there is this is built on a so-called transformer neural network architecture, and this is great, but it has a big disadvantage. The more context you integrate, so when you put in whole documents and so on, and then ask a question, computing budget or computing time scales quadratically. So double as long of context, 4 times as many computations. That's why in the US they think now of attaching nuclear reactors to data centers, because they need a lot of compute. And that's also why Sam Altman tweets, please don't thank ChatGPT, because if 1% of the words are thanks, then this costs us a lot of money. And this is also the reason why OpenAI is losing money, because they need so much computing budget. And now there's an alternative that was there before, so-called long short-term memory networks, a European language model, and we scaled that up, made a couple of algorithmic changes, and showed that in principle this can be competitive to transformers, and it's only linear in context size. So double as long context, double as many computations, which is much better. And in order to do that, we had to, for this first paper, we had to do calculations on a computer that cost roughly 10 million euros. And for that we needed to spin off a company and get investment for that. Yes.
So you rather went on to the private market to get investment?
Indeed, yes.
Grants are not on the horizon for you?
It must be fast, and 10 million for computing only, it's not possible with the current funding schemes in Austria, I think. Yeah. But
what brings the future? Are you staying in the private sector with that part of your work?
We'll see. So I'm not too much involved in this management decision, more on the research decisions. But there was a second round of investment or something like that, and then of course they will be thinking about getting also other investments from funding companies and so on. So that is all on the horizon. But everything is very new and went very fast. So yeah. We'll see how the decisions are made there.
Private sector have to be fast, computer power. What is the angle towards digital humanism in your research? I know it's a provocative question. Is it only, yes, I'm using that word, to reduce the impact on our environment? Are you thinking about different models that make us less dependent on US systems?
Yeah, as you said, so these current AI systems are very much built not for humans, but they have a particular purpose. Like when we scroll through social media on our cell phones, it's not these things are built to keep us as much on the screen as we want. Like they show us videos or TikTok videos or whatever. They show us content with the intent to keep us on the screen, to watch also advertisements and so on. And also these large language models, as they are provided now by the IT giants, they try to make us, of course, dependent. They're very usable for some things, trying to write text and so on, but also not exactly built for what we want, but they can support us, but they also make us very dependent. And so we try to develop, of course, new types of system that you can steer more, where you can also include certain, now it's hard to include certain guidelines and guardrails and so on. So we are and also one important aspect is the training data on which they are built. So also here we have the decision to build that on training data on texts that we can decide on, and this is basically also the knowledge and the values and so that are built in the LLMs. So I think this will be very different. The LLMs that we will build will be very different from the US-based LLMs.
and this is the most important point that I'm hearing regarding the colleagues from the US, from Harvard, etc., saying they are unhappy with the certain situation that they have, and we are building the alternatives. We are building them here. We are building them with the institutions that we have, with our science and with our businesses. So in the end, the user will have a choice and will be the one deciding to foster a system that doesn't care, or a system that is towards digital humanism. Thank you very much for elaborating that for us. We need those bases, we need those fundaments that we are, so we are able to make this decision possible. And coming to the WWTF and Michael Stampfer, the question will be to you, give us a little bit of history, how you strategically planned for the last years to build those bases. Michael, you are the managing director of the Vienna Science and Technology Fund. This WWTF task is to finance top projects in scientific research, while at the same time aiming to retain excellent young researchers in Austria, especially, I would say, in Vienna, since you're an institution of this wonderful city. Since 2003, the WWTF has invested more than 265 million euros in Viennese science through numerous highly competitive calls. Michael laid foundations for the development, as I said, for digital humanism in Vienna many years ago, and you're continuing to play a key role in promoting it. Give us more detail. I may open your slides. You can come here. You can sit just as you want. I can press the buttons for the PPTF.
Please press the next button.
Here I am.
Wonderful. We are a very small animal in a big city full of wonderful researchers. Getting our money in part from the city of Vienna, thank you, and in part from a private foundation that allows us to act completely in an independent way. That doesn't mean that we turn our back to the city and its needs. Yeah, our main areas are health, life science, environmental systems, and digital issues. So we try to be very close to what both the science fields and also the city might need. We are that small that we need these targeted areas, but we can also over 5, 10, 15 years develop areas and do one thing after the other to make a longer and stronger story. And since 2008 we are funding computer sciences, and since 2016-17 some of us, Daniel Löcker is in the room and others, were quite alarmed about that linear developments and engineer-only driven developments in computer sciences do not automatically lead us to total happiness, total happiness, which was a kind of promise of the libertarian people on the West Coast and in other places. And then we read books like The Rise of the Surveillance Capitalism, and we were quite sobered. And two things came together. One was our ability to proceed with interdisciplinary projects. So we have mechanisms for selection and funding interdisciplinary projects. And the second was that we can come forward with also this kind of a little more mission-oriented funding programs. and to bring together computer scientists with people from other fields from the first moment onwards, and not let the social scientist parachute in later seemed as a good idea. It turned out that the needs were huge. We were overwhelmed with proposals whenever we want some. Okay. Whenever we offer funding, and so there's we have no option then to continue with this program. We want to help create a critical mass, and yesterday afternoon in this room there was a meeting of many universities, research center, University of Applied Sciences representatives here to discuss also the formation of stronger infrastructures, that we do not only have to rely on projects alone. Projects, however, are important. We are preparing now the however you count it, fourth call for next year for this kind of projects. And we are also very proud that 3 universities have, with the help of the city and our help, managed to set up a doctoral college. 15 different subdisciplines in 9 faculties in 3 universities. The people who did it do it are real heroes, but we need this kind of platforms. Also the faculty of 30 talking to each other all the time. The students, PhD students, the first have arrived now. Perhaps someone is in the room. No, and we really can build a very good ecosystem of people here. So these are some statistics. I will not go into that. I just want to highlight, beside the project calls and the doctoral college, that we also funded strategy concepts. VWTF as a research center is a living example for that. They really rebuilt their strategy, and perhaps Katja, you can report also then how you use this tool to rethink your whole business process and research strategy towards the companies, which is a nice link to the FFG activities also. What do we need next? I want to restrict myself to 2 things. One is that we collect money from and energy from various sides, from public sources, but also from the academic organizations here in Vienna, to set up a kind of physical infrastructure, a center, not a standalone research center, but a center that coordinates research activities within and beyond Vienna, but also communicates a lot. That's so important, that we reach out to many other stakeholder groups and not die in beauty. No, that's a bad example, dying in beauty. I will tell you in a second of a tweet, a LinkedIn post I read yesterday, and I was totally appalled about dying in beauty, but that in a second. So we should not restrict ourselves to research alone. So as you asked Günter also about his other activities in the business sector, we really need to reach out, and there are a number of people, and you are one of our main testimonials for reaching out to the company sector and to civil society with these digital humanism topics. I will not present projects now because there has been a distinctive session for that on Monday. I want to stop with the dying in beauty metaphor because our esteemed Minister for Economic Affairs has criticized the Lieferkettengesetz.
Supply chain regulation.
Global supply chain regulation with the words, now we in Europe, we should not die in beauty. And I had to think of all the mining workers and textile workers who die in ugly situations. So I took that as a kind of warning to be not too offensive with metaphors in future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michael. The whole 3 days organized by Erich and his team, supported by the city, is about living in beauty. We want to build this digital world in a way that it is beautiful for us human beings. And there's a statement by Erich, most likely also about focusing on a center.
Yeah, no, actually not. I wasn't about. No, I just wanted to give credit to both FFG and WWTF. There are two things which are really helpful for us at the moment. We are running a platform for digital humanism, following a dedicated call funded from the Ministry of Innovation and actually run by FFG, who did an excellent work and made this very easy. So thank you very much. This was much appreciated. And of course, Michael is always much too shy because they are also co-funding this event, and I just have to thank you both for this. So that's all I wanted to say, not about the center. And the city, of course.
Let me extend on the point about the center. Me as a side-standing person looking at what is said all over the 3 days, I think research and grants and investment is so great. But this, what Michael said about the communication, working together, aligning, finding synergies is so important, and this has to be institutionalized. This is what I learned also from the association of your association. We need to have this in the next months to really propel with all the power that we're getting from those 3 days into a national and international stronghold for digital humanism. Let me put it in my words. And we have already a wanted input from your side. So what is your project and how you used the resources that are given?
Okay, yeah, I'm Katja Bühler. I'm the scientific director of the WWTF Research Center here in Vienna. We are a Comet-funded research center by FFG. And we also received a roadmap grant from WWTF to work on realization or ideas how digital humanism can be brought to practice. As a Comet Research Center, we are working at the border between academia and industry, so we are very grounded in what we do in practical applications. And we were in a special situation 1.5 years ago. We had to apply for a new Comet funding scheme in competition with other research centers to get a new funding for 8 years. And we took the opportunity and the grant to start in the research center a discussion first on how can we contribute. So our topic is visual computing. I forgot to say that. Visual computing in combination with artificial intelligence and simulation. And we started internally a discussion on how can we contribute with our research to digital humanism. What does that mean? And this was a wonderful discussion. Erich supported us on this way, on this road towards finding out for ourselves what does that mean. We had lots of workshops, and I have to say, all the young researchers, we are 80 people, appreciated that a lot. And we see that also as something which is binding people to us. We have a joint mission, and this was wonderful. Yeah, so we defined we said, okay, visual computing is one of the key enabling technologies to realize digital humanism, one of many. But and this reflected also in our roadmap in the scientific agenda for the new research funding. But we also reached out to our industrial partners. And I first thought, okay, they will say, what's that? No, but they were really interested in, because also of the AI Act, so they see that also economically that makes sense. And we already started to realize discussions with them on ethical consequences of the projects we are running and so on. So for us, this was a great win-win situation. We tailored our application for the new commit funding also towards these guidelines of digital humanism, and we were successful, and we are happy. We have the funding for the next 8 years, and we are even overbooked by industry, so which shows that this is also a successful concept to acquire industrial money.
Thank you so much. So the water is flowing together, and it is a river already, and maybe it's called Danube. No. Yes, and the industry has a demand for that. Marie Ringler, we were talking about money, we were talking about grants, we were talking about the industry has a demand. When I look at your organization, Ashoka, I see a group of individuals, of human beings that want to do a good entrepreneurial but social impact. And I wonder how you are hearing what you have, what you're seeing here, what you hear here, and how you put this into a context. What is your organization doing towards that? Is digital humanism a word that you are using? And is this by itself a very human organization? Just introducing a little bit more details about you. Marie, you are leading the Ashoka's work in Europe, and as I said, you are a member of the Ashoka Global Leadership Group. Ashoka is the world's largest network of 3,600 social entrepreneurs that I was referring to, internationally, 90 countries. And you are solving some of the world's toughest social problems. You yourself, you were born in Vienna, studied at the University of Vienna. You hold a degree also from the ESADE Business School in Spain, MBA from the University of St. Gallen, Switzerland. And you are the Vice President of the European Forum Alpbach. Give us your human but also international input, please.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. My sense is that these conversations about digital humanism need intersectoral conversations, not just interdisciplinary, but intersectoral conversations. And I was struck by some of our keynotes that we heard over the last days that described the issues and problems and challenges that we face with these new technologies. And I was also struck by a sense of almost powerlessness in the room. What do we do now? You know, what is our response to what we're seeing in this world? And the world that I come from is the world of change making. It's the world of people taking action. And I have a question for all of you, which is, who of you thinks of themselves as a researcher or a scientist? And who of you thinks of themselves as an active citizen and a change maker? See, this is, I think, a beautiful example of how these worlds intersect and how we as humans always have multiple roles in society, right? We're never just a researcher, we're never just a change maker, we're never just a parent, we're never just a citizen, we're all of those things very often. And the world that I come from is the world of social entrepreneurship. And what does social entrepreneurship mean? It's the idea that any one of us can use their entrepreneurial mindset, which has nothing to do whether you can read a balance sheet or not. It's really about identifying a problem and finding a solution for it, and driving social change. And the work that I do is embedded in the work of philanthropy. Most of the things that I do in my daily work are actually about changing the way that philanthropy, which is a multi-trillion sector in this world, fueling, you know, our work, your work, and others, to understand that we're at a precipice as humanity, right? With so many of the issues that we're facing, from existential threats like climate change to the big question of what will AI and how will AI shift our societies and what it means to be human. And so this world of philanthropy is, you know, stuck in the old ways, which is very human because change is very difficult for all of us. And we don't like change, right? And so a lot of the work that I do is talking about how do we need to shift the way we allocate funds, but also other types of resources in society, in order to ensure that as societies, we can effectively respond to the challenges that we have. And that is, of course, connected also to the work that many of you do. In the community of Ashoka Fellows, these are the people that we support financially and with network and support from our community. We have about 4,000 of those in almost 100 countries, 99 to be exact, and we're hoping that Ukraine will be our 100th very soon. In this context and community, hundreds of these social entrepreneurs work on the issues that we've been discussing over the last days. And to give you a sense of what a social entrepreneur is, for example, the founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, he's an Ashoka Fellow, somebody that we've been supporting and working with for decades. But also people like Kailash Satyarthi, who won the Peace Nobel Prize together with Malala for abolishing child labor, and people working in climate, for example, and in other spaces. And of course, when we think of social change, when we think of how we shift behaviors in society, how we shift mindsets in society, how we shift and change infrastructures and institutions in our societies, that's where the beautiful work of these people comes in. And we consider ourselves as an R&D lab, right? But it's not a university R&D lab. It's an R&D lab of founders, of people who started an organization and who bring change to the world. So in a way, it's complementary to the world of research. And what we're learning from that is that many of the social entrepreneurs that we work with across the world, they rely on research, but they also find that there are certain barriers to working with research. And I think those barriers are connected to the different incentive systems which are present for these different types of institutions, right? I have very different incentives than you have, or you have, or you have. And so one of the things that I would like to put on the table is how can we make sure that we cross those sectors more and not only think of business as a force that needs to be in these conversations, but also those that are coming from active citizenship and a drive to change the world, social entrepreneurs. One of the initiatives that we started recently as Ashoka is a global initiative. We call it Tech and Humanity, but at the end of the day, it's about digital humanism. You know, it's organizations like to give different words to different things, which is part of the barriers we were just talking about, right? We like to argue about definitions and the specifics of what we mean, which probably isn't very helpful in driving change. But in the work that we do at Ashoka and the work that we fund there, it is all about collaboration. And I think this is a word that I haven't heard enough yet in those last 2 or 3 days. How do we more effectively collaborate and bring all those beautiful ideas in the room together to jointly make a difference? And maybe you could show that slide that I brought. Because what I would like to show you is an example of what has come out of this collaboration. It's what we call the polarization footprint. The polarization footprint is very simple. If there are big tech companies out there in this world whose business model hinges on polarizing societies, can we make it expensive? And when we say expensive, can we measure it? Can we make it visible? Can we create awareness? And can we find ways of de-incentivizing these big tech companies to use polarization against society, against democracy, against every single one of us? And this work is co-led between Ashoka and Build Up, which is the organization of one of our Ashoka founders, Helena Puig, who actually comes from peace building. And it's not, it's not a coincidence that she doesn't come from, maybe a research background or a tech background. She comes from peace building. And to me, that shows the power of that intersectoral, interdisciplinary approach. People who come from very different perspectives, bringing in new thoughts and approaches. And what you see here is essentially a way of thinking about the large-scale systemic shifts that we need as societies, right? Because it's not just enough to come up with regulation, right? We need so many more shifts in society. We need legal shifts, we need economic shifts, we need to measure what we're changing, we need political shifts, etc. And this is, at the core of systems change. Systems change sort of being that idea that within society there are different levers that allow us to shift mindsets, thinkings, behaviors, etc. And you'll find that over and over in the work that we do as an organization. What I'm trying to get at is that in order to effectively drive the kind of change that we want to see in the world, based on the challenges that we heard about a lot, we need these types of systemic changes. Not necessarily a polarization footprint, but we need systemic changes. And to make that happen, we need different types of funding. Which is how I'm getting back to the funding question, right? Because funding that focuses only on one element or one sector or one way of thinking about society is actually not going to get us where we need to be in this world, right? If we just fund research that is not connected to a political conversation, if we just fund activism that isn't connected to a research conversation, if we just fund, if the VC world just funds what's going to make them money, it's not going to be enough. So one of the things that I talk about a lot in the philanthropic world that I come from is how do we shift the way that money and talent and resources are allocated? How do we make sure that, for example, one of the strongest forces, really impacting all these conversations that we've been having over the last 3 days are present, which is the world of venture capital and private equity. I was just at a conference where one of arguably the most powerful people in this world talked about, sort of the MAGA movement's view on AI. And you know what the MAGA movement's view on AI is in a closed-door session? This is the final race for Western values. That's their view. This is not about humans and living better and efficiencies. This is a conversation and a worldview that is about dominating the world. Which actually reminds me of something that was said on Monday, which is that we have medieval institutions and potentially also medieval mindsets, right? But I think what I'm missing here in this conversation is the billions of dollars that are being invested in these technologies today with a worldview that has nothing to do with digital humanism. And I think we need to bring those worlds together and have these conversations that are going to be very painful because we're going to disagree fundamentally. I'll stop here.
Wonderful, thank you. Very strong point.
Thanks, Mary. I totally agree to many points you raised. And I think he just mentioned that I'm coming originally from the mobility sector, so the long-term asset-heavy infrastructure sector. And I always said that the infrastructure we build and we plan is just an expression of our concept of society. And it's the same if it comes up to data, if it comes up to digital infrastructure, because this is also an expression of the ideology, as you mentioned, of those who control the access and the use to these kind of data. So it's extremely important to have more than just one alternative how to tackle these issues. Absolutely agree. And to the point you raised concerning the collaboration, of course we need intersectoral cooperation, interdisciplinary cooperation, and I think with the example you brought up is a perfect example that it's more than money, which is one of the FFG slogan, it's more than money, but it's also necessary to build up structures, long-term collaboration structures like in the competence center. And the last point I want to raise is the transdisciplinary approach. It's not only to address companies, of course, also, I mean, including social entrepreneurs, but the end consumers, and not to integrate them at the end of a project, but right at the beginning, to be able to assess the impact of a technological development or of the engineering, and also to integrate the decision makers. And we do have a lot of projects, also the one we mentioned before, where we have like ministries or the Austrian Broadcast Company, and not only the focus on the technological development.
Very strong point. Thank you very much for that. Yes. Also from the audience, we have hands raised. Here we go.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask Mr. Klambauer something, and then Herkommer, maybe you can then refer in your talk to this. Are you, or in how far are you cooperating with the TU institutions in Vienna? And are there synergies to be made? And if not, what hinders it? Because the funders are the same, like it's the Austrian state. So how could there be more cooperation, like that no one feels like, they stole something or they building up on my work or whatever. And then Mr. Herkommer, I wanted to ask, when you talk later, we don't know how the economic impacts will be the next 5 years from new technologies, but how can we make sure that it's not like the last 40 years when there is economic development, that the value extraction only basically goes to the bourgeoisie, but that we actually economically benefit all of it? Like, are there strategies, or what could you, your outlook?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Günter
I'll answer
first.
briefly. Yes, we are collaborating, of course, with TU Vienna, and especially in this large-scale project on bilateral AI systems. This is a perfect example where one of the strengths of the TU, which is symbolic AI, comes together with one of the strengths of JKU, which is deep learning neural networks and so on. So, and of course, what would help us if collaboration is in this level where I'm working is we need to work together. Usually, you need common researchers, and this is also related then to funding, to have PhD students, postdocs that work on or are employed here and there, or do a common, like a doctoral program or something like that. So there can be work or research, also education, so in the AI study programs and so on. And for that, I think here would be a lot to gain with little money. So here, I think this would be very efficient, and and also infrastructurally, so the like common GPU infrastructure, especially GPU for the symbolic sub-symbolic AI systems. And so I think almost all researchers are in favor of collaborations, and here it makes particular sense. So thanks for the question.
Before Fridolin, you're answering, it's also input from your side that we have here as slides. More detailed introduction to you, Fridolin. We're very happy that you're here. You're heading the digital affairs of the Chamber of Labor, so you're adding another viewpoint to our discussion, beside industry, entrepreneurs, scientists, also here from the Chamber of Labor. You're an expert in shaping a fair and inclusive digital future and advocate the interests of employees in the digital transformation. You studied business administration at WU in Vienna, Copenhagen Business School and the University of St. Petersburg. Your work focuses on the promotion of digital skills in various professional fields and the participatory design of digitalization processes and companies.
Thank you very much. I think I'll also get up and switch my slides myself. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me here today. And thanks for the first question that I'll try to incorporate into my short introduction. This is a picture of how I like to look at innovation cycles, and that addresses not only the technological innovation, that is kind of the opening of the Pandora box, right? Something comes out, it's out there, people are going to use it. And usually what I think of this opening of the Pandora box, this technological innovation, is it is a promise. It's a promise of something good and something bad, right? It can be associated with generative AI and the productivity gains that it promises. It can also be connotated to the surveillance that we've discussed earlier, that it promises the control that it might bring. But it's per se just the potential very often, right? And it needs then to be followed up by system innovation, which tries to integrate this technology into our society, into our workplace, to actually make this potential materialize, to realize the potential, to bring about the productivity gains that we are promising ourselves, to bring about this power, execution of power and control that some fantasize about, or to bring about better working conditions that we try to force, right? And this technological innovation is the opening of the Pandora box. The system innovation is kind of the taming of what comes out of it. And the social innovation is then followed, and we need to make sure that it actually happens. It's not like a natural process. It's not said that it's that technological innovation is followed by system innovation, is followed by social innovation, but we need to ensure that social innovation also happens. And this is trying to make it as, or the potential that is materialized needs then also to be distributed, right? To benefit most of society, most of employees, most of humanity. And in historical hindsight, we see that it takes quite some time from the processing of one of these technological innovations to the system innovation to social innovation. And it can happen in two ways, the system innovation and social innovation. It can also be technological focused, but it can also be entirely analog, right? For example, in social innovation, we can come up with regulation, we can come up with taming the power structures, and all these things that we've been trying and achieving in historical, in the past, that actually ensure that there is a fairer and more just world. And also we've talked about this dying in beauty and regulation. And I think we have to remind ourselves of the purpose and aim of regulation. Of course it can be burdensome, and of course it can be bureaucratic, and sometimes it's not very well educated, but the idea of regulation is actually to initiate innovation, right? Because if you're not allowed to have child labor somewhere in your global supply chain or forced labor, then you need to be more innovative than just to exploit employees or people across the globe. So innovation in its regulation, in its pure sense, may also stimulate innovation. And this is then why I'm also drawing these arrows back, because social innovation can of course create an impulse for system innovation can create an impulse for technological innovation. Quite generally though, I think it's important that even if we're very skeptical of certain technologies, it makes sense to get accustomed to these technologies, to understand risks but also benefits, to learn how to use them in a good way, and to start this collaborative and co-determined process that we've been discussing a lot today, because at the latest at the system innovation, co-determination makes sense and is important, right? It is relevant that you include those who are affected by it, be it the employees, be it the customers, be it society, and not just for the participatory effect, like, yeah, we've all been voting on whether there should be bananas in the kitchen or not, and now everyone's been included, and now we get on with the real stuff, but actually for its potential, right? Because there are ideas, there is innovation within the minds of the workers, within the minds of people in society, and we should include this also and not just delegate innovation to some specific group of people in some back rooms. But of course, before we can discuss very much the distribution of wealth creation, we also need the investments and the development. We've discussed it, right? If we want to have European alternatives, we need the money for it, we need the people for it, we need to actually bring about this alternative innovation. We cannot just say Americans, as we've heard, are sometimes maybe, or let's put it the right way, the MAGA far-right tech giant representatives are maybe not necessarily pursuing the same goals that we want to achieve, but if we want to achieve our goals, then we also need to not just criticize them and talk about alternative ways, but actually do it also. And I think this is important, and we're all here today because we're all addressing certain aspects of this process of actually getting change done, and getting it done in a participatory and inclusive and collaborative way. And what is also very important is, I think, the aspect of education. It's always discussed and mentioned as very important, but I think what is sometimes we tend to forget, because education is always something we delegate to school and to university and to other education institutions, is also very relevant that it happens at the workplace, right? Because this is where the change happens. This is where it's met by people who have been working before and who are continuing to work. And this is why we are very critical when we see that companies are increasingly withdrawing from investments into education at the workplace, especially now where the time might actually require more investments and more training on the jobs. And also because the application of certain technologies varies quite extensively from one job to the other, from one industry to the other. And we've also discussed a lot about the innovation ecosystems. We learned that the innovation ecosystems also live and prosper by the geographic proximity, right? It does, a hub is a hub for the sense of lots of people from various fields close together and actually bringing about innovation. So this also makes a lot of sense and is relevant. I've brought a few examples, because as Federal Chamber of Labor, we don't just, or we don't like to just talk about it, but actually also like to bring about this change that we think is necessary, and that we understand as social innovation, right? I've discussed it, it needs to be done, and we think that while we are probably not the first ones to bring about technological innovation, we should be the first ones to join forces with whoever brings about social innovation, right? And we did this with the Digitalization Fund, that was a funding instrument for broad projects that sought to bring about social innovation.
Please give us some short points on your project, so we have also the time to discuss them. So
we'll do that. You'll come. You can come back to some of them if you want to. But it was about inclusion, creating working environments that allow people who are otherwise excluded from the labor market to actually conduct and do work. HITSA app, climate change, it's about to enforcement of labor law when it's too hot at the place where you're actually working as a construction worker. You are allowed to take a break and go into the shade, and it helps you to actually enforce that law that already exists. New apprenticeships can also be changed. I was discussing about companies withdrawing from funding from education. Apprenticeships are also getting fewer and fewer, and I think we also need a new and innovative approach to it. And then we've already heard about surveillance at work, so there's also some examples on how that is actually evolving as a topic, from the app as a boss for Fedora riders, but now increasingly also in insurance and other work environments. And this I will skip.
And the question is answered?
The question? Yeah.
It seems like thanks. It seems like that the only effective way to let society participate on the value creation was reducing the work hours. I mean, this is like something that happened, and when people say, GDP in US per capita is higher than in Austria, well, it is because they work just by far more, yeah? So the dystopia is real in a lot of senses in the US. And so is this the way to go forward, to just push for reducing the work hours, or is there some other way to actually co-benefit?
Well, I think there is, by joining forces and having a co-determination that actually partakes in this change process, that is relevant. But yes, very often it's about time and money in the end. But it doesn't necessarily need to be free time or spare time. It could be also time for educational purposes or for partaking in democracy or whatever. But yes, this is in our economy, and with the view on GDP, this is very often what's in the end discussed.
And we have to change this view. Thank you very much. Thank you. I take this, and then we have Michael referring. And we have another statement or question.
Both. Thank you. Thank you for wonderful presentations. I was particularly intrigued by Marie's presentation and also what you showed us, but I was also slightly irritated by your last two sentences. Talking about MAGA behind closed doors, because the first sentence was, it's kind of the last fight for Western values, and the second was, it's about world domination. And these are hugely different things in the meantime, because we can't talk about Western values anymore, since the new American values, which are not non-values, differ. And we also have a second reason to talk about new global values of people of goodwill, because on the ecological questions, climate and so on, China is way far ahead now of the US. I mean, this is really, what's happening in the US on climate is unbelievable at the federal level. So I think we have to be very careful about the terminology now, yeah, and should develop this. So the question is, can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yes. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify. If anyone thought that I endorse these views, then I just want to make sure you understand I don't. No, I was quoting literally what this person said. And I don't think that, and I agree, the question of, we have to be precise, because maybe we would agree here that we, the foundations of our work of digital humanism are Western values, but then the question of what those Western values are, clearly becomes more and more confused by conversations that are happening around the world, right? I think what I wanted to point out to is that there is there's a strong push by certain actors in this world to actually style AI as a tool for world dominance, which it could potentially be, right? I mean, if we think about potential, developments in AI, generative AI, et cetera, there is a very dystopian possibility of world dominance and we all know, right? And so what these people are saying is we need to win in this race. That is the conversation that they're having. They're basically saying, we Americans, I'm quoting here again, we Americans need to win this race for world domination. And yes, the Chinese are one of those that they want to win against, right? Not only, but also. And Europe, of course, you know, plays a role there as well as a competitor. The reason I brought this up is because when I heard this, I was truly terrified. I was truly terrified, and I think we should all be truly terrified, because if there are people with billions at their hands who are shaping an industry that is part of all these conversations that we're having, that are having these views, and you can actually go and watch Peter Thiel speak on YouTube, and you'll hear all of this. It's all out there in the open, you know, it's there. Then we need to act. And incremental action is not going to be enough, right? It's not going to be enough that Ashoka spends, you know, a few millions on, you know, building the polarization footprint with a community and building an ecosystem. It is not going to be enough that the city of Vienna does great things, you know? It requires all of us to step up to this challenge and ask ourselves what it requires from all of us, you know, in order to think about this and take this very seriously.
Very clear. Thank you very much for that. Michael, please.
Thanks. None of us would come behind the Chinese closed door. That's my only comment. Otherwise, I'm totally happy with what you said. I would like to know what behind their closed doors is being said and done. Three small observations that we are already many. The first one is Christoph does a lot of work in the field of digital humanism, plus the ecological dimension with artists and civil society. In the city of Vienna, I think we have now half of the departments of the city have running and communicable digital humanism projects. And I had the privilege to be in a participant in this 5-year adventure at the Chamber of Labor. We had hundreds of fantastic ideas from the civil society, from NGOs and so on. But what we needed was a kind of a group of determined people from different areas who could communicate something coherent. And here we are now, we can do now, and now it's absolutely the moment to follow what you say and do this kind of spillover and spreading out and joining forces. And last week, last point from my side, I was I participated in the German Foundation General Assembly, which the Deutscher Stiftungstag, where about, I think, 500 foundations, and they have, in contrary to Austria, a lot of rich foundations, were assembled. And compared to them, what I felt there, here we are optimists because we know what we want to do next. I felt there in the assembly of the rich philanthropic German foundations that they are at the dead end because their model of everything is sunshine and nice and we are the good guys in a good world has come to an end. So that's what I want to add to your observation.
Very strong observation. Yes, the opponent is big. We have a clear task. And of course, a lot more can and shall be discussed. But there is a bilateral possibility over lunch. I want to have the introduction of the last round of statements, maybe taking into account what you still want to answer to one or the other person. So my question to the panelists, and I hope this is the right question that also the audience wants to hear, with all the very, very strong points that you heard today, what is the next thing to do for you and your institution to even be stronger in this work for digital humanism, to even work stronger together from the next working day on this joint topic? Your statements in the last round that we are having here, and then bilateral talks over lunch. Karin, please.
Well, I would say that we were just talking about an upcoming AI funding call within the next weeks. And I really strongly recommend not only to look at the special digitization calls to get funding, but also at all the other ones where it's not only about the development of a digital tool, but how to use a digital tool as an enabler for circular economy or life science or by the work or whatever I mentioned before. What we are currently working on is also how we can address digital humanism better in our submission guidelines and our assessment criteria. For example, if you plan a project and you want to use those data for whatever, let's say a better transport tool, then often specific groups are excluded, like elderly people or poor people or women or whatever. And if there's a lack on how you address your different target groups, then it's just the lack of quality of the project. And so this is one thing where we are working on how we can address that better. And I just would like to add one sentence to your debate before, because for a very long time, I think the perception, at least here in Europe or Central Europe, was, China was far away. It was not a democracy, clear, but far away. Europe was just a bunch of bureaucrats and regulations and making everything difficult, and the United States were standing for freedom, innovation, and the Silicon Valley culture. And now things are definitely changing, and if we want to see at least one positive thing in all the MAGA movement. So maybe this is the final wake-up call for Europe to define the European core values and to have what I am missing so far is a really qualified political debate on that, and also a public debate with more information and what's good about the European way of working on digitization and big data.
The call is clear. Thank you very much, Karin. Thank you very much. Günther, what is the one thing out of the discussion that you want to focus on?
Yeah, also, a brief conclusion. So I'm very happy about this platform and this community that I know that a lot of people are thinking about digital humanism and thinking how tech should work, how they should enable us humans to do things, and how it should lead to changes. And therefore, I think it's important for us, and this is my part in this thing, that we are also able to shape the technology, right? If no one in Europe is able, and I'm using again the AI large language model example, if no institution in Europe is able to train and develop a large language model at the level of the IT giants, at the level of ChatGPT, then even though we might know at some point what we want and what it should do and how it should work, we're not able to do that. So we have to embrace the technology as well and have to be able to shape the technology. And here we have to catch up, because China is able to produce these LLMs and US, and in Europe, it's a bit difficult currently.
We are depending on you and your colleagues. Please give
I'm doing my best.
Our regards to your colleagues. Thank you very much. Fridolin, your point to take.
Yes. One thing I think is to empower a more knowledgeable debate and co-determination through supporting workers' councils and union members and workers on the change that is happening, and how to partake in it and bring about more social innovation. I think that's very important, because otherwise we're just talking about it and not actually co-determining it, or actually thinking about it or bringing it about. Thank you.
And the education that you're doing, I just want to mention is, before, in my eyes, it's so important. The Chamber for Labor is also financing the chair at the Applied Science University, FH-BFE, for digital humanism. So you are drinking your wine, you are walking your talk. Thank you very much for that, Fridolin.
I have two hats for this last answer. One is my hat as the Vice President of the European Forum Alpbach. There will be a very in-depth debate at the European Forum Alpbach about these challenges that we face, and I think we have some really amazing speakers, including Meredith Whittaker, the President of Signal. So come at the end of August to the Tyrolean Alps to continue this conversation. With my other hat, with Ashoka, I think what I understand from the work that we do around systems change is that we need to make sure that the right people have a seat at the table. And what do I mean by that? The European Commission, the European Union is debating regulation, and we need to make sure that the right kind of people sit at that table and are part of these conversations. And so one of the things that we're aiming to do with the work that we do with the polarization footprint is make sure that we have debates that are really founded and grounded in an understanding of the common good and the good for all, and not just in, a very single-minded focus on, what benefits me in my, corporation, what benefits me in my research center, what benefits me in my NGO, but actually sort of this broader perspective of what benefits humanity.
Thank you very much, Marie. You made it clear. You made it clear to all of us. It's about us. We have to be individually the change makers for our future. Thank you very much. Michael.
I listened to what you have been saying and I tried to walk the talk, and take seriously what has been said.
And this is proven for a long time. Thank you very much, Michael, for being this cornerstone, this pivot point for all of our activities. And going out of this room into the lunch break, I think the discussions go on for all of us to be those change makers, for using the wonderful institutions that are represented here to be a platform where we more strongly collaborate. Because everything that we do not now, in terms of pushing and fostering digital humanism, will be experienced by us and our children in the next years. We are the generation that this society that we love, this beauty, is dependent upon. Thank you for your work, for your ongoing efforts, and let's join forces. Thank you very much.